Hello and welcome. We are so happy today to welcome Corey Dunn. She has a podcast called Modern Ancestral Mama, and her Instagram handle is for nutrient's sake. And we are here today to talk about ancestral traditions. We're here to talk about parenting. We're here to talk about health and, of course, nutrients. And welcome, Corey. So happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
We are here together as a mother-daughter. I don't know if you know Penelope's story. She's lost over 320 pounds.
No, I've lost over 160
Thank you.
pounds. I used to be 320 pounds.
Thank you.
I was going to say, if you lost that much, that would have been, possible, but that's a lot.
No, it does sound impossible. Actually, 160 is a lot too. And of course. And so the thing is that I'm really into food. And I was like a warrior for it not happening again. My mom was morbidly obese and she died at 59 with severe obesity on her death certificate. So I was like, this is not happening to me. And I think as moms, we really try. We really want to do the right thing. And, we raise our kids, and then all of a sudden, boom, we don't have control over what they're eating. And you hope they make good decisions. And some people call it child abuse. And some people think that it's our fault. And it probably is. So I don't know. I'm just curious if you could tell us a little bit about how you became a stand for modern ancestral traditions and for nutrient's sake. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background.
Okay, so I grew up in what I would call a crunchy house before crunchy was a thing, right? I was homeschooled K through 12. We lived on a hobby farm. We had goats that we used. They weren't milk goats. We only had them for fiber. So they're fiber goats. My mom made sourdough. We did all those things, back in the 80s and 90s when nobody was doing that. It was weird. So fast forward, I grew up with all that stuff. Fast forward, I go to college and I'm like, my mom's weird. I'm going to do my own thing. And I had a very, I don't know how to say it. My major required a lot of time. And because of that, I ended up eating a lot of fast food, a lot of Cocoa Puffs, ridiculous, not at all what I was raised on food. And when I got married right out of college, and my husband had been raised on a standard American diet. And so to him, the way I was eating in college was normal, right? So I just kind of went with that. And then by the time I had my second baby, she developed horrible eczema. So it was from about 6 months old, and it was about from her neck, all the way down to her toes. She was just totally covered. Thankfully, it wasn't on her face, but everywhere else. And I did the conventional thing for about 6 months. So she was about 6 months old. So up until about her birthday, her first birthday, I was doing the conventional thing, doing what the doctor had told me to do. And it wasn't working, obviously.
Steroids and antibiotics.
Yeah. So I don't think we did antibiotics, but we did steroids. And the crazy part that happened, the steroids is actually one of my moments of this isn't working. I had given her a bath. This is so crazy. So I gave her an oatmeal bath, which you'll know why it's crazy in a minute. But so then I get her out of the bath and I'm trying to get her dressed, and I put the steroid cream on her and she stands up, she screams, and she runs away from me. And I was like, oh my God. So it was burning or tingling or something, not feeling good on her skin. So then I put her back in the bathtub, wash it off. And didn't put that back on her. And at around her first birthday, I am at my wit's end. I'm going, nothing is working. And I'm telling my mom about it, my crunchy mom, right? And she goes, hey, Corey, I've been reading some stuff and I think there could be a connection between eczema and gut health and food allergies. She's like, you might want to try cutting out dairy and cutting out gluten. So I was like, all right, at this point, we've tried 6 months of everything. What would it hurt? So we cut it out and my daughter's body cleared up in less than a week.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, she was covered covered.
I mean, this story is not uncommon. I mean, I
No, it's
myself was
not.
led into this field of holistic health through my skin, so I completely get it.
Right. So the thing with the oatmeal is that if you don't know, oatmeal, if it's regular oatmeal, can be contaminated with gluten. So I'm giving her these oatmeal baths and it's like making it worse. I had no idea. And so that kind of just jump started me and like kicked me down a rabbit hole of, well, if what my doctor is telling me about my daughter's skin isn't, true or doesn't work, what else doesn't work? And if food is so powerful that it can clear her skin in a week, what else is it doing that we aren't really aware of? So
Right.
then I just kind of fell down that rabbit hole, and we went our household went paleo. So it was my husband, my 2 children at this point. We went paleo for about almost 5 years, like sometimes more primal, but mostly no grains, no legumes, and only some dairy. So then fast forward again to I'm pregnant with my 3rd baby, and my mom gives me, again, my mom, it's always the hero of the story, gives me a copy of Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon Morell. And so for Christmas, she gives this to me and she's like, this is what I consider the Bible of nutrition. And I read it like from cover to cover between Christmas and New Year's. So like within that week, I'm sitting there reading this freaking, huge book. And it just like revolutionized the way that I saw food, and even from having done Whole30 and, reading all of the Whole30 books and the paleo books and all of that at the time, and then changing over to reading this. And it just kind of, in between there, I had kind of been having these feelings of like, well, I don't know that I really truly believe that grains are horrible, but it seems to me like what we're doing to them in a modern world is not good.
Yeah, like contaminating them with glyphosate and
Right. And so
corrupting them
then reading
genetically.
Nourishing Traditions, it was like this whole opening thing of like, oh, and now I can see how all of these food groups can fit into a nourishing lifestyle.
Yeah.
And kind
Prepared
of
the right
relearning
way.
all of that. Right.
Yeah.
Corey, I'm smiling so much because my mom recently gave me this book to learn about whole foods on a deeper level.
Yeah.
I used to know nothing, and like they didn't teach us anything about food in school, which I'd love to
Right.
dive into about that. And also I'm smiling so hard because we just released our Sally Fallon episode today where we interviewed Sally Fallon, and I was just amazed. I'm still amazed because I'm still reading the book and I'm still like making the recipes, and it's totally changing how I look at food too. So I'm just like totally with you on that.
I love it. I love it. I have a friend who, when she first started learning about this, she literally went through like Julie, the movie Julie and Julia? Is that what it's called?
You gotta see
Where
it.
she
You're
like,
gonna
never seen
you're gonna
it.
love it. You're
it's
gonna love
so great. So it was a book first, and this woman, it's a true story. This woman like gets Julia Child's book and just cooks through it, the whole thing, like cooks all the recipes. So I have a friend, Diane, who did that with Sally's book. She just like went through the whole thing and just like made all the recipes.
I
I
love it.
love it.
Which is awesome.
So
It's huge. It's a huge book.
What I'm also noticing is a theme, because I think that as much as we want to help our children, they rebel, especially around the thing that we believe in the most and love the most. And it's like you were raised to probably know better. And that's why you were able to like really implement something that worked for your daughter pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Even though you might have doubted it or resisted it. But you, like Penelope, veered away from how you were brought up to kind of gain your autonomy and independence. And then came back to it, which is just interesting because it's like we tried. I'm sure that you work with a lot of moms and you have a lot of people in your audience who are also trying really hard. And it's like sometimes it doesn't matter what we do. It's kind of like it just kind of backfires sometimes. I don't know how old your kids are or if you're at that stage yet, but it can be challenging.
Yeah. My oldest is 13. So we're not totally there yet. But I mean, I think kids kind of have to go and find their own thing, but I'm fairly confident in the knowledge that most kids who are raised with real food will eventually return to it. Most people that I know who have done that. So I don't know. Here's hoping.
Yeah, so certainly hopeful. Yeah, it's just there's just a lot of because like 1 in 5 kids is obese, 1 in 3 it has a chronic disease or is developing one, and we're at a crisis in our nation right now. And what is one thing you think moms absolutely need to do today to turn the ship around?
Like moms who are on a standard American path.
Anyone who's listening, yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing, I think if you could make as much food at home as possible, and the other part of that is not try and make weird food. Like I know that can sound mean to people who are, used to eating pate every day, but like if your family is not used to that, like I said, my husband grew up in a standard American diet home. If he had come home one day and I was like, all right, well, we're having, liver and onions every day for the rest of your life, he would not have been happy about it. And it took him a much longer to get to the point of being like, yeah, maybe I'll stop eating Doritos most of the time, but maybe I'll still have them every like 6 months or something, which, I'm fine with. He gets to make that choice. But what I mean to say is that if your family is used to eating burgers, then make burgers. If your family is used to eating pizza, then make pizza. Just if you're making it at home, even if you're using, don't feel like you have to make it freshly milled flour, or even though that might be gold standard, that might not be approachable right away. So like, don't get overwhelmed by that. I just think
Amazing.
Try and make normal food just in a more nourishing way.
And that's
exactly how I lost the 160 pounds. I tried the diets, the keto, the paleo, the Whole30, and the only thing that worked was taking what I was eating at Burger King, my double bacon cheeseburger, and making it at home. And that's how I lost the weight. And I started just losing so much weight just eating at home, just making that food at home. And that's what I want to like implore and empower like all the women who struggle with obesity and everyone who struggles with obesity to do, because it will reverse the obesity eventually. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's really solid advice. Make food at home, because and knowing your source. And we speak to some people, and I'm sure you have these people in your world too, who are like, even if you're buying organic, that's not even enough because the nutrient density. And so I am hopeful, like we spoke about a little while ago, about the food chain, improving, because we do know that the food chain is pretty corrupted, and it's unfortunate. But you will make huge strides with your health if you just make everything at home. Unfortunately, corporate greed has gotten opposed to our health, and we're seeing the results firsthand.
And Corey, I really wanted your opinion on this because in school, I wasn't taught how to cook. It's like sexist to teach women how to cook now. And that's just like so faux pas. Like we didn't learn how to garden, cook, season, none of that. Like you taught me, but school didn't teach me. So I heard some of your clips and I love them. What do you think about school not teaching us how to cook anymore?
That can be twofold, right? I think it is definitely needs to be, I think everybody needs to learn how to cook. Period. Where you learn, how you learn, that's up for debate, like whether that's your parents' job. I mean, I think I'm going to go on a limb and say, I think that parents are responsible for the education of their children, regardless of where your kids go to school. So regardless of whether you homeschool or private school, public school, whatever, the parents are still in charge of your education. And, sometimes we have to take it upon ourselves to make sure that our kids are getting the knowledge that they need to have. And cooking is not, I totally get, why people would say that it's a sexist thing to teach women how to cook. It is a sexist thing to only teach women how to cook. Men also need to know how to cook. Like, that's stupid. It's not sexist if you're going to teach both sexes anyway. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the public school system.
Okay.
In general, I think that if they were to teach us how to cook, if they were going to have home ec, which some schools still do have home ec, or cooking classes, which they're going to be beholden to whatever the standard is from the government. So I think that's probably going to be kind of lame cooking classes anyway. You know, I think everybody needs to know how to cook, regardless of how you learn. You just have to learn it. Go on YouTube for the love of God and watch some videos, and then learn how to cook from there.
It's a life-saving skill. What do you wish every mother knew?
Oh gosh, that's such a open-ended question. I think, all right, I'm going to stick to the food world and say that I think that you need to be able to, I think you need to know that that you don't have to be perfect. It doesn't need to look one way. It doesn't need to fit, it can fit into your budget. It can be, it can work with your kids, and their, pickiness or not pickiness. Like you can, yeah, that's what I'm going to go with. You don't have to do everything perfectly. It doesn't need to be perfect. It can just work. And it may take practice.
Exactly. Like your kids might not like it today, but they might like it in 3 months. It's like, yeah, I think you're right. I think so often moms really want to get it right. They want everyone to be happy. And then when they're not, they think they're a failure. And then it all goes to, it all falls into shambles. And I think that's really, really sound advice for moms who are listening, because we really do try. And I like to use the word practice, let's just practice this new habit. It's just like, we don't have to get it right. It's just practice. It gives us permission somehow to like not get it right.
Well, and it takes the pressure off your children.
No, it keeps sitting in your eye.
Okay, sorry. What were you saying, Corey?
I would say it takes the pressure off your children too. Like if it's a practice, like we do that sometimes where we'll, I'll get some bee in my bonnet about we're gonna, I don't know. The last one I was going to have my kids all make breakfast every day, and they were going to like take turns. And I said, we're going to try this for 2 weeks and we're just going to see how it goes. Turns out it wasn't a good idea, but it's okay. It might be a good idea in a year, but this year it wasn't a good idea. And that's okay. Like it took the pressure off of all of them. It took the pressure off of me. We're just going to try this. We're going to see how it goes. And I was open to feedback. Yeah.
What'd
you say? What did they make? Let's see. My one daughter, so they got, do you know a ninja, I can't even say the word.
Yeah,
Ninja creamy. Yeah, you know what that is? Yeah. So they got one for Christmas. So my one daughter was like, I'm going to make ninja creamies for breakfast every time that it was her turn. But the problem with that was that she gets up at like 6:30 and nobody else gets up until 7:30 or 8.
Oh, that was
and I'm
strategic.
Like, you cannot. I know. So she's like, she couldn't make it when she got up because everybody is sleeping and it's so loud.
So loud.
So that didn't work. And then my son was like trying to make French toast, except that I was going to have to make the bread for the French toast. And I'm like, okay, like this just defeats the entire purpose of me not having to make bread. Because my goal was like, I was going to be able to sit and have coffee with my husband in the morning and it was going to be nice. And I kind of just went, okay, like my youngest is 4. So I have between 13 is my oldest, my youngest is 4. And I was like, this is not the season for this experiment. We'll try again another time.
That's like kids pushing that like envelope as much as they can.
That's
so funny. So I'm really curious about your thoughts on body positivity, and I don't know like which body positivity you're familiar with, because when I in Generation Z, we are all about like, for some reason we decided that being obese was like perfectly fine and healthy and beautiful. And when I was 320 pounds, they were like, yes, Penelope, you're beautiful. Doctors, therapists, they were all like, it's totally fine. But as a mom, you're a healthy mom. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Okay. I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s. I was a teenager in the early 2000s, and that was that was not a nice time to be a teenager who wasn't super skinny. Okay. So I'm not a super skinny person. I never have been, not in my entire life. I've always been curvy. Like I would take ballet lessons when I was 4, and I would be like a curvy 4-year-old, if that's even not like I wasn't overweight. I just had hips as a 4-year-old, you know, I had little booty. Like I have never, ever been a very skinny person. Okay. And in that era of heroin chic, you know, when it, like all of the models, you could see their hip bones and you could like, I don't know, they were not healthy either. Right. So what I like about the health at every size movement is that it got us out of that heroin chic era, which I'm actually a little afraid we're heading back towards with Ozempic. I think it's actually a really big problem for young women because I don't think that being uber skinny is really healthy either. Like I actually wrote an entire paper in college on the problem with that and with anorexia and bulimia and all of these things that were really plaguing teenagers that were my age. I had multiple friends, multiple people in my life who were struggling with eating disorders. And it's not good, you know, particularly when these women are now in their later 30s like me, and they are still unable to have a baby because of the damage that happened to them in their teenage years from trying to get to that super skinny ideal. So in regards to that, I do think the health at every size movement had some good about it because I think it took away it made it so that you saw a person rather than a body, right? And I think that that's good. People are more than their bodies. However, we know for a fact that people who are struggling with obesity also have other health concerns, and that you know, obesity has just so many problems that come with it, and it's the thing is that it's not easy. I'm not ever going to say that it's easy to lose weight. It's not. But the way that our society goes about it, also with like the severe dieting and the you know, you just have to eat, you know, less than you're moving or whatever. I think that's a problem. Like that's not the only factor. So
it was so confusing when Penelope was at her highest weight. She was like 15, 16. And she was just like, I'm beautiful. You know, Mom, you're fat phobic. You know, you're the one who has the problem. Can't you see? It was really interesting. And I was confused. I'm older than you, but, you know, kind of, we're not quite in the same generation, but almost. And this body positivity thing really influenced her. Like it like hijacked her brain. I mean, I don't know if your kids have phones, and that was probably
nope.
I think
I had
two things
I had a phone.
I did wrong were, you know, to give her a phone too early, and we had no idea. We had no guidebook. But I should not have done that. And also send her to public school a little bit later in life because I just private school didn't seem like it was an option. I couldn't figure out the homeschooling thing. And so those are two things I really wish I could do over again.
Yeah, there's this narrative online that was like really like and there still is there's this movement of morbidly obese people who eat junk food on camera, and they say all food is good food, all food is fine, all food is healthy. And that's promoting a narrative, and it promoted a narrative to me that it was okay. So I would literally be alone in my dark room with my junk food, shoving it in my face, hiding it from my mom. I was begging, borrowing, stealing. At school, I got my junk food. At my friend's house, I'd do anything for it. And I had a binge eating disorder.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like nobody was calling that out on social. It was just like, you're beautiful, you're obese, you're fine. And it was like really obese models like posing. And so I started posing and thinking it was okay. And then my doctors and my therapist said it was okay. And then I'd be in therapy sessions and they'd have junk food out. Like, so it's like, it was so normalized. And it's weird because we were in like the nicest place in the world, like in the country.
Yeah, one of the nicest zip
One of the
codes,
nicest places, and they're still having the junk food. They're still promoting that unhealthy narrative. So I think like both extremes, like anorexia and obesity, also both really, not healthy. And after losing the weight naturally, using whole foods only because you educated me.
Right. And
it wasn't like the doctors were afraid to tell me the truth.
Well, and also I think that you hit on something really important. Twiggy was absolutely glorified in that era, and I still want that body. I'll never have that body. I, like you, was in ballet as a kid and was the only fat kid there. I don't know how fat I actually was. Definitely not to today's standards. But I think that education is what we need to optimize, right? You're probably educating your kids. I thankfully could educate you, but for nutrients' sake, which I love that handle because it's really about that. And where are we getting them from? And if over 70% of our kids are getting their food from ultra processed foods, which is it's staggering to even say that out loud, but it's what's happening. There's no nutrients in that. And so how can we expect our health outcomes to be any worse or better than they are when that fact is so real? I wish that your movement was the majority. Maybe it will become the majority in the coming months. That's my hope, at least, because nutrients are really where it's at. So how are you sourcing your family's food?
How do we source it? So we raise as much as we can. So we raise meat chickens, we raise meat hogs, and we have egg laying hens. We get our beef from a local guy. We get seafood. We live on the coast, so we get seafood from a local fishery. And I'll also buy canned seafood. We've had a bunch of people come on our podcast to talk about. We had a whole series on fishing and raising healthy fish and these sorts of things. So, I did some research into that, found some really good canned fish options, which is great if you live in the middle of the country. We buy a lot of our produce and our raw milk from a local farm store. And then I buy what I can't get through that, either through Azure Standard or I buy grains from either Breadbeckers or Azure Standard or Unsifted. And let's see, other than that, I'll sometimes buy food on Amazon if I can't find it locally doesn't have, or if I can't find it locally without ingredients that I don't want. Does that make sense? And then I'll just go to a grocery store to buy, the other things that are on my list. And I really try and live by that. Like, I can't be perfect. I'm going to do what I can without making myself crazy.
Yeah. I mean, but you're so my kind of gal. Like I grocery store is not top of my list either. Penelope knows I avoid it. I'm like, I don't enjoy the experience. There's just something about it I have an aversion to.
It repulses you.
I don't know. Yeah.
It's okay. I'd much rather go to the farm and touch the warm eggs that were just laid by the chickens. That was a surreal experience yesterday. I really walked into the farm fridge and the eggs were warm. I was like, these were just laid and just put in the basket. And I just got them. So blessed.
That's cool.
So cool.
Yeah. Animal husbandry is intense, I hear.
Yeah. So we haven't, at least yet, we haven't done any husbandrying. But so we will buy chicks from there's a place that ships them. It's called Murray McMurray, and they'll ship you chicks they're just like, they hatch that day and then they ship them to you. It's pretty wild. You have to be like on call for the for the post office to call you and be like, your chicks are here, come get them before they die. Because they ship them, so they only have like, a little bit of time before they've been in the box too long. Anyway, so we get chicks from them, and then we've gotten our piglets from the same guy who we get our half cow from. So we haven't ever birthed animals.
Right.
Yet.
Yeah.
That's something my husband wants to do. And I'm like, oh man, it's a whole nother level.
It is. It is. What are you concerned about most for American families, especially moms these days?
I think that there is I don't know if I want to say assault, but because it sounds really strong, but there's an assault on the family unit. This comes from screens. This comes from schools. This comes from sports. Not that these things are inherently bad in of themselves, but we do too much of that and it breaks down our family, right? We spend too much time traveling for sports. Not that sports are bad, but making your whole life, your child's whole life about sports is going to be it's going to take away from your family time. And not having family dinners, I think, is actually a really big deal. Like, I really think family dinners, sitting down around the table, maybe not dinner, a family meal 5 times a week, that is my goal. Now, we thankfully get more than that because my kids are home all day. But not every meal is the whole family sitting around the table. So I think that modern American families are missing that. We're missing that communal mealtime. We're missing that family building that happens at the table. We're missing the learning that comes from sitting together, social learning, food learning, manners, like all these things that you learn from sitting at the table with your family and eating. We're losing that. And I think that's a big deal.
I completely agree. And frankly, that was our first breakthrough when Penelope wouldn't eat. I was on MasterChef. I'm a really good cook.
It's true.
And I love to cook. And we didn't eat together for years. And that was actually our first breakthrough. It was just sitting down at the table for a meal, eye to eye, face to face, because she felt like I was judging her, for how much ketchup she was using on her, whatever she was having, or, whatever it was. And it's tricky. It's tricky to confront your kids when they've developed a behavior that isn't good. And it's something they have to learn. And better, but telling them that better doesn't really help. Do you have any advice for moms, how they can have that conversation with their daughters? Because I was kind of mean. I mean, I did everything. I shamelessly bribed. I ripped your curtains open. I tried to drag you out of bed physically. I tried to sweet talk you. I think I tried everything imaginable.
Yeah, it's true.
I tried to ignore you. I tried to get other people to help you. I mean, honestly, make the therapy, doctors. I never gave her drugs, but you know what I mean? So yeah, it's hard to know what to do, what's going to make the difference. And it wasn't until, of course, that she was ready that things changed. But do you have any advice?
I think, so when my kids, I had just the 2 older ones, it used to be, let me back up a little bit more than that. When they were really little, they were, let's see, probably 4 and 3. We lived from up until about that time, we lived in a really, really, really small apartment, very, very small. We did not have a table. They would sit on the floor with like a little floor height table. You could like sit under it, but it was very, very low to the floor. And it folded up so I could put it away when they were done eating. That's where they would eat. My husband and I would sit on the couch and eat. And I realized at my sister-in-law's house for dinner one night that my children did not know how to have a family meal. Okay. Because they never had. And we had then moved into a house where we actually had enough room for a dining room table. And I said to my husband, we need to make this a priority. This is going to be something we're changing in our family. We're going to do this together. My kids were really young at that point. So it didn't take a huge amount of time for them to become cool with, this is how we're doing it now. However, I, at that point, was learning all of this new stuff about food. This is around the time that I'd gotten Nourishing Traditions. And we had just had our third baby. And I had a lot of anxiety around my children eating enough nutrients, my children eating enough, if I made soup, nobody in my family except me likes broth. Okay. It's so annoying. But it's true. Okay. My husband will drink it. He likes it okay now, but it took a while for him to kind of come around to it. And none of my children love it. Okay. So I'd make soup and they would eat the vegetables and they'd eat the meat out of it and they wouldn't have the broth. And in my knowledge of food, I was going, the broth is the most nutrient dense thing at this meal. You have to have it. And it made me crazy. Like, it made me a crazy person. I was like, you have to eat this. Like, I made this. And then, like, I put all this time and effort into it. And, I know that this is what your body needs. And I was just like, I was a crazy person. And every single meal was ending in drama. And it was just awful. Like, nobody wanted to be there. We were all stressed out. And I remember very clearly, I have multiple posts on my Instagram about this. You could scroll back and see it. I got to the point one day where I was like, this isn't working. We are all stressed out. You can't digest your food when you're stressed out. Right. So like, this is obviously not a good thing. So we had this big chalkboard in our dining room and I drew a ginormous peace sign on it. Okay. Like, it's so silly, but I drew this on the wall and my husband comes home and I said, things are changing today. And we are not doing this anymore. We adopted what's called the Division of Responsibilities, which is from the Ellen Satter Institute. I don't know if you guys know what that is. Yeah. Okay. So, if you don't know, you're listening and you don't know, what this says is that the parents are responsible for what is fed, when it is served, what is served, when it is served, and where it is served. And children are responsible for how much they eat and if they eat. So we sit down, my husband and I sit down and I say, okay, guys, we are done with our drama-laden meals. Here's what Dad and I are responsible for. Here's what you guys are responsible for. Now, keep in mind, my son was 7, maybe a little younger than that, maybe 6. And my daughter, my older, so I have 4 kids now, but at the time I had probably 6 or 7, 5, and then an infant. And I sat them down and I said, we're changing this. We're not doing the ugly mommy anymore. And you guys are responsible for this. We're responsible for this. We're not going to make you try anything. We're not going to force you to eat anything. I'm going to serve the meal and we're going to have a pleasant time together. And that was however long ago that was, probably 8 years at this point. And it like revolutionized the way that we handle food in our house and our meal times. And we are now able to sit there. And if we talk about the food, which sometimes we do, it'll usually be kind of in a somewhat neutral way, that'll more be like the flavors. We'll talk about the flavors rather than the specific nutrients and stuff that's in it. I do that more outside of meal times. Because I think that the meal times is more just a time to be focused on family and focused on connecting. And, my kids like to play various games at the table where we'll do, like, what are you packing in your suitcase? My name is Corey and I'm packing cookies. And then, my husband will say, my name is Ryan and I'm packing rope, and then you have to like do the whole thing around and around. And so then it doesn't become there's no pressure on the food.
Yeah, because when parents like us are really into food, it can actually cause food and eating disorders,
Yeah.
and it's a shame, the anorexia. And I'd just love to go back to the Ozempic conversation. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Because we too believe that it is like the new eating disorder. And Penelope read that book by Johan Nori, and I think he alluded to it being the next eating disorder because you're right. And we look at it as starvation with the gut motility issues and the permanent gut dysbiosis and gut microbiome changes that they know, and also the black box warning of thyroid cancer and other things we've seen, like suicidal ideations and blindness. We're hearing from a lot of medical professionals that that it is the new miracle drug. It's going to save our world because it's ending addiction. And I don't agree.
It makes me like genuinely sad. Today I saw an ad on my phone and it was like the most well done ad I've ever seen in my life for a drug. And I've seen so many ads for drugs, but it was just so well done. I was like, they're making so much money. And the ad, funny enough, was about how they're making the drug so much cheaper so that so many more people can have it. Now, the craziest thing about this that not a lot of people know is that this drug is being sold on TikTok live streams from influencers who know nothing about health, who've never read a book about health in their life, who are like the average American who's on an ultra processed food diet. And people like Johan Nori, who are also on an ultra processed diet, admit that they go on this drug. They don't change anything about their lifestyle. They keep eating the junk food. They keep going to KFC. They keep eating Skittles. They just eat a little less of it and they still feel sick inside. They still have the mental issues, but they're losing weight and they don't even recognize themselves anymore that, yes, some of them are taking their lives. And it's so serious to me. And it makes me so sad because, like you were alluding to earlier, there are young girls on TikTok who can easily buy off the market, off the shelf Ozempic drugs, pills, weird formulas. We have no idea what's in that stuff on TikTok. You can buy it on TikTok shop and you don't know what's in the ingredients, but you know there are millions of young girls who are watching these influencers lose weight and they're so tempted that they're buying these drugs. And I don't know what's going to happen to them in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
I think fertility is going to come onto our radar sooner rather than later. But just curious, your thoughts and reflections on what you're seeing.
Honestly, I'm not on TikTok, so I don't know what happens there.
Dark place. Don't go. It's not.
Yeah. No, my social media is old school. It's like Instagram, and then I use Facebook for like personal stuff. But in the groups, like Facebook is the only one that's actually figured out how to do groups well. Okay, I don't know. I mean, I think I've seen too many stories of people saying like, yeah, and now I was on Ozempic, I lost all this weight and I'm also now blind, or now I've lost too much weight but I can't gain it back. I don't know. I think like I don't know a lot about it at all.
I think that's the problem. None of us do.
Yeah, that's probably true. So a while ago, this is kind of related. I have somebody that asked me, what do you think about, I don't know, it was one of those like you buy the food
Like Jenny Craig?
Yeah, it was something like that. It was like Nutra, what is that called? Nutra something.
Nutrilife?
Maybe.
There's a couple of them. Yeah. Nutrisystem.
Yeah, where that's what it was. Where they ship you the food, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And they're like, what do you think about this? And this is somebody who doesn't really cook for themselves, doesn't really know anything about food. Mm-hmm. And I said, I think that the problem is there's no changing your lifestyle. You're not learning anything from this, which is the same thing that's happening with Ozempic to a degree, right? People are not learning how to eat real food from this. This is not a sustainable option. This is not something that is going to serve you long term. This is something that is quick fix. And like you said, who knows what happens in 3 years, 5 years, 15 years? Like, yeah, I just think that as a society, we definitely lean toward quick fixes, and you just can't shortcut your health. You just can't. Like,
You really can. And for those of you who are listening today who have decided to go on the weight loss medication, we just want to say that you can come off of it. And I really believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the body was designed to heal itself. And there's hope in that. And if somehow someone's convinced you that that's not true, that you're broken. I mean, Penelope was depressed. Penelope was anxious. Penelope had PCOS. She reversed all of that.
With no drugs.
Right.
At all.
I really believe it's possible. I've seen thousands of miraculous health turnarounds with chronic disease reversal, including obesity. And I know it's possible. The first thing that happened, you were telling a story about, your daughter's extreme recovery in just a short period of time. My mother went blind and she went on this macrobiotic diet. And I saw her recover her vision. And it was really earth-shattering for me. I was in a wheelchair at age 7 with a rare bone marrow infection. And so I had a lot of health issues growing up. And I think that we were all put in these situations, to learn from them. Like you said, we have to learn something. And I think that losing the weight, getting healthy, choosing a lifestyle like the one you're living, it's maybe not the easiest, quickest way, but I think it is ultimately because it's the way our bodies were designed to live. I know we're coming to the end of our time together, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about how sunshine plays a role in your family's life. We're really into circadian rhythms.
And the sun's beautifully beaming.
I know.
On your
And like, it's like a weird angle now. I'm trying to the sun it's setting that direction and it's going over that out of that window. So sorry, anybody.
No,
we so believe. Yeah, we're like
we're all about the sun.
Yeah, I mean, really.
Yeah.
How does it play a role? So, like I said, I don't know if I said this or not, but we left our home in Maryland about 3 years ago and moved to Southeast Georgia to be able to have land and do like the home study thing. And one of the things that I noticed when we moved down here is that I don't get seasonal depression anymore. Or I don't know if depression was even ever it, but like you feel like the blues. Yeah, the blues in the winter where you're just kind of like, oh, like I just don't want to go anywhere, and some people get it way worse than other people. I know. But when I moved down here, it's so much easier to be outside almost the entire year. It doesn't really get unbelievably cold. We live very close to Florida, just for like reference. Like we live an hour north of Florida. So we have pretty much North Florida weather. And to be able to be outside, I can garden year round here. Which was not at all something you could do in the DC suburbs, which is where we lived before.
That's where I grew up. Nice.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you would know then that it's like it can be miserable not half the year, but for a long time in the winter. So yeah, being down here, we're outside a lot. In the summer, we're usually inside in the middle of the day because that's when it's very hot. But we'll be outside in the morning. We're usually outside in the evening. And I just kick my kids outside as often as I possibly can.
It really is so important. I mean, the more we're learning about screen time and its correlation with poor health and how important the sunlight is for our health, we've been convinced that the sun is like a demon and out to get us and going to kill us all, but it's not true.
Yeah.
But like you said, you want to avoid, of course, that like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., especially in late spring and summer and early fall, because that can be harmful sun. True. But early morning sunshine, evening sunshine, we really try to get it. And I think it's life-changing.
It is. And Corey, before we wrap, I do want to know if there was one piece of advice you could give a new mom or somebody who's going to become a mom or wants to be a mom one day, what do you wish you knew before you became a mom?
Before I wish that Lily Nichols had written her book, Real Food for Pregnancy, before I had my first baby. She didn't write it until I was pregnant with my third baby. And I really, really, really wish that I had done some more research or knew that how much food impacts pregnancy, how much what you're doing, even preconception, actually really matters. I really wish I'd known that. And then I wish that I had I wish that I had more of a community when I first had my babies. Like, I wish which is really difficult to do. It's very, very, very difficult when you don't have any friends who are in the same life stage as you are. Like, I had my babies like 7 years before any of my other friends like started having children. I have friends that are from college that still don't have kids. And that's great for them. Like, that's no judgment on them. It's just like, I have a 13-year-old, so like where we are in our lives are totally different. And I remember having a baby, and my friends were sending me invitations to come to like bars and stuff with them. And I'm like, I can't do that. Like, that's not something that I'm able to do. But like, I missed having that community, and it didn't have to be go to a bar. That wasn't the only option, but like it was really difficult to work out how to be in relationship with people who were in totally different stages of life at that stage, where they were still doing a lot of that stuff and I was at home with my baby.
That is sound advice. Yeah, I completely can relate to that. Yeah, it's true. People really underestimate their health and how it relates to their pregnancy and fertility and the outcome, of course, the health of your child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially with nutrients. That's really solid advice. That's a great question, Penelope.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap, is there anything that you would like to share with our audience, or any last pieces of wisdom or advice you may have?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, don't make yourself crazy trying to do everything all at once. I think you have to kind of, if that's your personality, cool, like dive in and do it. I don't think most people have that personality. I think most people get overwhelmed and then have to quit. So if you want to change something, do it in a sustainable way that works for you, that works for your family, that works for your budget, that works for you and your spouse, that works for your kids. Like, just don't make yourself insane trying to make a change. It's okay if it takes a couple of years. It doesn't all have to happen all at once.
Yeah, that's such good advice. It's the
Mm.
same for weight loss too. Like, if you're trying to lose weight, don't go all in one day, because that's how people fail. Take it
Mhm.
one step at a time. That's how you have lasting results.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, for those of you listening, if this was of value to you, please don't hesitate to share it with somebody that you know could benefit, and like it, of course, if you did, and subscribe if you haven't already. And we are so thrilled to bring you this advice, to bring this free content 5 days a week. And we just love you. So please comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you agree with us, you disagree with us. We just want to know you. So definitely comment below, and we will see you all the time.